Hey, welcome back.
Welcome.
Thank you for being here. It is
Yeah.
sunny and beautiful outside and my favorite kind of day.
Here we go.
Here we go. We were going to talk today about some of the best parenting, I guess not advice, but like counseling that I got on just kind of overcoming like trauma cycles and families and things like that. And so we're going to get into that. So when Dylan was 18 months old, I had this like crisis and I suddenly was afraid of everything. I was afraid of myself. I was afraid of you. I was afraid of him, which was weird. I was just scared all the time and we did not know where that was coming from. And I just was like melting down, like not okay. And at first I thought it was postpartum kind of depression stuff. And I sought out therapy and you supported that and I appreciate that. And I ended up in therapy and that's when I got this big advice. And so I want to talk to you guys about what happened and why I got so scared because the therapist was able to explain that. But first, I want to talk to you about how to ruin a perfectly good engagement. Because before all of that happened, Tyler proposed. So we can't forget that. Dylan was about a year old. And Tyler, so here's the thing, is I like to just let people know that Tyler proposed on the couch. And the reason that I like to do that is because that puts it on him and actually neglects all the times that I ruined the magical proposal that he had planned.
Pretty much, yeah. I
mean, how many times did you actually plan the proposal? Like you knew you were going to propose. How many plans did I mess up?
Yeah, backing up a little bit, I had already purchased a ring, and I had a couple different scenarios. So like off the top of my head, there was two. So I had a couple different scenarios lined up, and yeah, I was just waiting for the right moment. I wanted I wouldn't say I wanted it to be more of a romantic kind of thing, like.
I mean, the first time, because we were moving into the duplex.
And ideally, my idea of romantic as at that age is probably wasn't the greatest, but it was still like there was an attempt made.
So that first time we were moving into the duplex, and I remember showing up on the moving day and you had bought flowers and there was champagne and you had kind of played it off as like, we're just going to celebrate moving in.
Yeah, we had just moved out of your parents' basement.
And then we got into it about where things go and like how to set up
her stuff, her stuff versus my stuff.
And like messy versus not messy, and like this is gonna look cluttered versus not cluttered. And we got into an all out argument.
And if you're married, you kind of know that most of the arguments you have are the weirdest small things that
completely derail everything.
You just decide to put your foot down for this like tiny thing, and yeah, and so that was one of those moments where. And
so we just like didn't talk for like a whole day.
And so that kind of didn't feel right to propose after that. So,
then you started planning for the 4th of July.
4th of July, yeah. So go to fireworks, come back, and then do it there. Mm-hmm. And that didn't necessarily.
No, it didn't pan out. And here's why, is that, so a couple days leading up to that, so we moved in, like it wasn't that far beyond our fight that we had just had about our stuff. Like we moved in at the end of June.
Yeah, so it's like moving the goalpost like a little bit.
Just like a few days, right? And so he's like, okay, I'm going to do this big firework proposal. Well, a couple days after our big fight, I came home and I was like, I think I want to chop off all my hair. I'd been growing it out. If you remember when we met, I had like this really short hair. I'd been growing it out and it was finally like kind of where it is now. And I was like, I think I'm going to chop it all back off. And he was like, I wouldn't do that. And I was like, what do you mean you wouldn't do that? And he was like, I feel like you're like, I like it long. And what he was trying to do is like realize that probably I wouldn't want to chop it off like I always had said, like, if we got married, I pictured my hair all flowy and long and all, and I was like, didn't know that that was coming, but I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, I just wouldn't cut it. And I was like, don't tell me what to do. And so I went the next day to work and I cut my hair. I like pixied it. I chopped it all off.
She was also a hairstylist.
I was also a hairstylist, so it wasn't just like cutting my hair randomly at work. But yeah, so I chopped off all my hair, and then on the 4th of July, we're driving around, and I'm carrying this with me because like he was like, I got home and he was like, yeah, it looks good. I think you're gonna regret it. And I was like, again, like, who do you think you are, dude? And then we got in a fight about shoes, I think. We were like on our way to go see the fireworks, and and like hang out with friends, and I think it was like a pair of shoes that I wanted or something, and you were like, and then I was like, what is your problem? Like he was acting funny, and I was like, I'm so fed up. And so then we get in another fight about shoes, as Tyler said. The fights are weird at first. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to the 4th of July.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah,
I'm going home. Because I own this about myself, but I can be a little dramatic sometimes.
I don't think you even said home. I think it was you were going to go maybe to your parents' house.
No, I was at home because we went home.
I think we were at home.
No, we were in the car when the fight happened.
Oh, okay.
And then I was like, let's turn around and go home. We were like on our way. And so we turn around and we go home. And I'm sitting on the couch pouting. And I'm like, I'm not going to give in. And I'm giving Tyler the full-on silent treatment. And then what?
And then, well, I think there was probably a conversation to the point where it's like, you know, I gave up, and it's like, because there was a conversation like, oh, you're never going to do this. And like, are you ever going to propose kind of thing?
There
like,
was that.
Like,
I was not nice about that either. I wanted to like,
done holding my breath for this.
We need to make this happen, or
yeah, because we had been together for
2 years,
almost 2 years at that point.
We had a baby.
Yeah, we had Dylan,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was just a matter of time. Like, again, we weren't going to get married because of Dylan. It was more of, if we're going to get married, it's because we care and love each other. So, yeah, I went into our closet and then proposed that way. And then,
not in the closet.
No, but I had to go to the closet to get the ring. That's where it was hidden.
Right. And so you come out, I'm pouting on the couch. He holds out a ring and says, all right, will you marry me? And I was like, oh, I ruined it. Like, I knew in that moment, I was like, you were going to do it, and I totally ruined it.
Yeah.
So that is how you ruin a perfectly good proposal. I did say yes.
Or a couple.
A couple of good proposals. Get in those silly little fights.
And then
kind of be a jerk to each other, and then, you know.
Yeah. But
we did, you know, it happened. He still wanted to marry me after all that. So that's, you know.
Yeah.
Good job, babe. So yeah, so we get engaged. We're proposed. You proposed, and we're doing life, planning a wedding. And I wake up one day, and it was night and day. Like, if one day I was fine, and then the next day I wake up and I'm terrified. Like, my whole body, like, you know when you're watching a scary movie and you know something bad is going to happen? Like, that moment of, like, he's around the corner, don't go around the corner. I was suspended in that state, is how I can, like, say that it felt. Like, my heart was constantly racing in, like, doom. And I was like, what is going on? I would cry every night. And you were always like, what can I do? How can I help? And I was like, I honestly don't know. I don't know why I feel this way. And like I said, it was, I'm thankful because your response was to hug me and love me through it. But also to, when I said, I think I need to get help, you were like, okay, like, what do we need to do? We did not have insurance that covered counseling.
Yeah, any kind of therapy.
And so we paid out of pocket, and you were like, again, like, you modeled that so well early on in our relationship, where it was like, your health is my health. your success is my success, and let's do what we need to do because we're a team.
Yeah. And at that point, we had no premarital counseling. Like some people go through that before they get married.
Some people do.
I had no experience with therapy.
Way different things before they get married.
Or counseling, as growing up either. So what I knew about what therapy or counseling was nothing, basically. So it's just, I knew it, it was supposed to be therapeutic and helpful. So it's like, yep, go do it.
Yeah. So I find a therapist. She's 40 minutes away. Tyler drives me every time, watches Dylan while I go in and I work out my fear. And she sits down and she starts talking to me about how I'm feeling. And she says, okay, well, start filling me in about your past. And I start filling her in about my past. Some of you know, some of you don't know. My childhood was pretty traumatic. There were really, really good high points and some amazing things that happened as a kid, but there were some like pretty icky things that happened too. I won't get into the gory details because that's not why you're here. But needless to say, what was happening, and as she explained, she said, okay, so I want you, it was after a few sessions together. She said, I want you to talk to your mom if you can, if you feel comfortable. I want you to ask how old you were when things started getting tough at home. And so I thought, okay. And I went to my mom. I explained that I'd been going to counseling. And I said, I have this homework assignment and I need you to tell me how old I was. And she said, when things really started kind of hitting the fan at home, I was 18 months old. The exact same age that Dylan was. And I went to my therapist and I said, here's what she said. And she said, well, the good news is you're not going crazy, right? She had kept assuring me of that. She said, I don't think this is postpartum. There's probably hormones at play for sure. But she said, often when you've survived some kind of trauma, you replay that trauma, especially like childhood trauma. It replays, not necessarily like, I'm not replaying it like reliving it, but your body will feel the same sensations and you'll start to kind of feel those same things. And so when I was 18 months old, life became scary. And that's why suddenly I have this 18-month-old and I'm watching him grow, and your body naturally, she said, would go, I wonder what would happen to him if he lived through the same thing. And this is not a conscious thing that you're thinking. It's just what your brain naturally does. And then your body responds. And so what I was feeling, she said, was that. Well, that ignited a whole new terror for me, because then I thought, well, what if it does repeat? Because I had always heard, and a lot of people here, if you grow up in these kind of situations, you're going to repeat them.
Yeah, you're a product of chip off the old block.
Right. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. If you were raised in this kind of home, that's the kind of home you're going to produce. And so then I was like, I remember coming to Tyler one day and I was like, I don't even know if I should be part of Dylan's life. Like, I feel like I might hurt him if I'm part of it. And you were like, you're going to be fine. And like, again, you were very encouraging and you were like, let's continue to push into this. So I share that with my therapist. I'm like, okay, so now here's my new scare. Like, here's now what I'm afraid of is that I'm going to repeat these patterns of trauma. And she said, wait a second. I want you to think and realize that you actually have a choice in what kind of parent you want to be and what kind of home you want to provide. And I know for some of you, you're like, well, yeah. But that was like revolutionary to me in that moment. Like, what do you mean I get to choose? And so she said, yeah, you actually get to choose what kind of parent you want to be, what kind of home you want to provide.
Or how you parent even.
Yeah, like how you're going to do this. And so the next few sessions, she said, you need to talk to your fiance. It was homework. And then we drafted like a plan and put it in writing. What kind of parents do I want to be? How am I going to punish my kids when things go wrong? What kind of home do I want to provide? How do I want my kids to feel when they're around me? And so I listed it all. I thought, okay, and we both agreed, like, we don't want our kids to ever be afraid of us in any way. Like, I didn't want to ever invoke fear in my kids. So the relationship needed to be built on respect, on all of that, but not fear, right? I want them to be able to tell me anything. I want them to know that when they mess up, they don't need to be afraid of me. And you agreed. So that went into the plan. We wanted a home where our kids felt comfortable hanging out and they felt comfortable bringing their friends. And so every single home did, like, literally down to the home we live in now.
Yeah, we chose the house based on we have a second living room upstairs, and that's like the kids' space, and that's like we wanted to deck it out with things that would be inviting for them and their friends. And
yeah, we had like the Legos upstairs and the video games and the
TV and all of the things. And so we purposely chose this house because of that. They had a space, a kid's space.
Yep. So we've chosen that on purpose. Along the way, we have also made it's not for everybody, right? So hear this too, like, just because this is what worked for us doesn't, like, we are not therapists. I can only tell you what worked for us. You have to kind of walk through that process yourself, and what kind of home and what kind of all of that, like, you need to do what's right in your brain. But for me, those things kind of made sense. We also agreed not to like hide things from our kids. So part of the plan was like our kids know that mom and dad are going to disagree sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids know that we're going to feel stressed out sometimes. Or our kids know that we're going to mess up sometimes. Again, one of the things that you do really well is recognize and apologize. Like, anytime we've overstepped, that's really important to like go to them and be like, hey, I got angry in that moment and I'm sorry, and here's how I'm going to do better. And I think that that's something that, like, especially like I think about the dad in the situation, like, it means a lot from a mom, but I think that raising two boys, hearing that from their dad, and like you being able to be like humble and like, hey, I raised my voice and I shouldn't have, or, you know, things like that, and asking for their forgiveness, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, I think that's been huge.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of things we had to work through, coming from two different types of upbringings.
Mm-hmm.
And me, and not coming from a family of divorce, some of the things that I believed worked and my upbringing were like red flags, landmines that you couldn't get, like, they wouldn't work for us because of that. So
I mean, and that's the thing, is like, when you're combining and deciding what kind of parents you want to be, like, there are going to be things that I'm like, this is the right way to go, that you're like, no, that's, and same, like, he's going to be like, well, here's how I was raised, and I'm like, well,
and it took us time, like,
that, right?
Because even like through school, there's still like different models of thinking, and like tough love versus me as being more the tough love, and her being more grace, and just kind of working through it and just like pushing, and then hers is more of support. Mm-hmm. So there's things, and that we've
and there's ways to honor that in each other too. Because you don't want to completely shut off how the other person wants to parent. You do want to be on the same page.
And I can say both of our kids are different. Like,
very.
They
need different.
Yeah, and some of them gravitated towards one model over the other. And
one of them. We only have two.
And then, yeah, and then it was just more of after we figured that out, it was push into what was the best model for each particular child.
Yeah, because I think with Dylan, he was one that like he needed the grace. He put himself in timeout all the time. He was always his worst critic, and so he needed somebody who was a little bit more gentle. Evan, we can talk about that in future episodes. We don't have time. He was our wild card. Super sweet, but like, wow, was he? He was our very stubborn kiddo.
So yeah, we learned a lot in that first. I don't know. We're about a year and a 2 to 1.5 years in. So we learned a lot about parenting.
And I totally understand why kids add that layer of stress to any relationship, because you do. So not only are you coming at it from two different backgrounds and having to decide how to be parents together and how to be a teammate in that, but you are also dealing with, like, if one of you or both of you has some kind of like traumatic history or not, even if you don't have a traumatic history, there's probably things that are unhealthy, because none of us are perfect, right? Like, my parents aren't perfect, your parents aren't perfect, we are not perfect parents. We've all messed up, and that's left impacts on our kids, and so we're all navigating that as well. Mm-hmm. And so I completely understand when therapists are like with the last therapist we went to, he was like, there's three main things that couples fight about: kids, money, and sex. He was like, that's the three things that couples come to him about. And we were like, oh. And he's like, if you're fighting about one of those three things, know that you are normal.
Yeah.
I mean, you're normal if you're fighting about other stuff too, because fights in marriage happen. Mm-hmm. But you choose each other.
Always.
And in this moment, what I think helped the most was continuing to choose each other and decide what kind of parents we wanted to be and what kind of home we wanted to have and how we were going to navigate.
Yeah, setting up together. Expectations together, yeah.
Yeah.
And having that open communication. It also isn't lost on me that I was the only one in that duplex that didn't have the weird mojo feeling.
That's true. Dylan also had weird mojo.
there was a moment where
he was going through like night terrors,
and he thought pirates were going to come take him.
Which did not help my mental state when I was up all night with him.
Yeah.
And he had nightmares all the time. So there is something to that. Sometimes I was like, maybe there's just something weird in our house, but also I know that I was going through trauma. Yeah. So in the end, about 6 months into therapy, I started feeling so much better. I was no longer afraid. You and I were stronger. And it was about that 6-month mark that you and I said, I do.
That's right.
And then we bought a house, and then
we did a whole lot. That's like a whole.
That first year is a whole other episode, I guess.
I think within a week there was a whole lot that happened. So
we had a lot happen.
We like to do things
quickly.
Big.
We don't mess around. A lot happened after that, but I will say, one of my biggest takeaways and one of the things I recommend for all people becoming parents, not just if you've experienced trauma, seek help. Go to counseling. Counseling is not just for people who wake up feeling scared one day. Counseling is for everybody. If nothing else, work with your partner to decide what kind of parents you want to be and have those conversations early on. If needed, like we did, actually write it out. Here's what we're going to do. And then know that you are probably still going to mess up. And give yourself grace, because parenting is no joke. It is not for the faint of heart. Like, it's tough. And your kids put you through it, and you put each other through it, and you put yourself through it. So give yourself a heaping amount of grace. Come together at the end of the day and realize that you're both doing your best.
Yeah.
What else? Any other big sage words of advice? So seek help, make a plan, come together.
If your plan doesn't work, try again.
Replan,
yeah.
Yeah.
Just try. Show up. not about being perfect. It's not about getting everything right, because most of the things you probably won't get right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just about the journey and what you take away from it. Yeah.
Thank you for being so supportive.
Yeah, you too.
For loving me through the hard stuff.
Yeah. And I think it was we can end on this, but wasn't there something, I think it was your aunt said something along those lines about.
That'll come later.
That'll come later. All right.
That'll come later. My aunt was very good at serving humble pie.
Yeah. I guess we'll spill the beans. Yeah.
Believe it or not, young me needed a whole lot of humble pie. So that's coming. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. I'll see you guys soon.
Have a good
Bye.
week.